What are subtle red flags at a job interview that say working here would suck? Well, the overtime isn't mandatory, but most folks stick around after hours most days. Spoilers. The overtime is mandatory. Was interviewed by senior programmer and the department head. The department head was continuously making condescending remarks towards the other interviewer. Poor guy just sounded broken. Hope he's somewhere else now. The second interview, the general manager brought me into the conference room with his 8 managers present. At first I thought it was a meet and greet, but no. They grilled me for an hour and a half. Didn't appreciate that, along with a couple other things, and politely withdrew from being considered. Couple months later I'm playing in a ball tournament and come across one of the managers. I mentioned how weird that interview was. He says, "Also it for you?" Huh. I found out then and there you were being interviewed for my job. Dot. Yep. Dodge a bullet there. I was once part of a group onboarding for an IT job. They handed us all the one-page new hire contract and everyone except me signed immediately. When I read the paperwork, I discovered we were signing a mystery document. Clauses included "I agree to abide by the personal search and seizure security policy" attached, without other pages. There was no way to determine what I was agreeing to. I kept requesting more and more pages until the HR drone said, "Okay. I guess me is just determined to hold everyone up. We will handle you separately if you are struggling so much." After I walked out and drove home, I called the hiring manager to apologize for not taking the job. When they ask out of nowhere what clients can you bring with you, I interviewed with MetLife Insurance about 20 years ago. They demanded that I provide them with a contact list of no fewer than 100 friends and family. Noped out of that quickly. Last job I worked. Yay. Everyone here is new. But it's totally because of COVID. The boss doesn't like people going out to get lunch because they're afraid you'll never come back. So being your own lunch, you'll get weird looks if you leave on time. It was a Chinese-owned company with heavy Chinese work culture influence, so you were expected to stay overtime all week. Also, the people here are nice, but it's pretty stressful. Eater. Also was told by my trainer, "You want to know the best advice I can give you? Find another job." This was like my second week in. Once an interviewer straight up asked me if I had any trouble working for free on weekends. I told them my free time is more valuable than anything, and that the only way that I would work a weekend is if they are paying me and if I felt like working a weekend. She got really mad at me and ended the interview right away. Biggest red flag I've ever seen, because they didn't even try to hide it. This actually happened to me. Interviewer. Do you have any questions for us? Me. What is a challenge this department has recently faced? Interviewer. When you are signing all the forms they give you and you are taking your time to read over every document so that you can fully understand what you are getting into, and people come in and start telling you that you don't need to read this and that, just sign here and so on. I hate that in any situation. Not just jobs. Buying something big like a car and they're like, "Oh, it's just standard contract stuff." Let me decide if it's standard. You know full well if I sign this I've agreed to whatever the is written. My favorite is there's a lot of people waiting in line to work here. Count yourself lucky. I interviewed for an independent contractor position on a piece rate. It's hard to predict how much you're going to earn on a piece rate. So to attract me, the manager showed me some pay stubs from his guys. I noticed that 1. He could easily cherry pick pay stubs to show his best guys' best weeks. All that tells me is that I'm likely to make less than what he's showing me. At least on average. 2. The pay stubs were obviously designed to be confusing. They were a full page and absolutely covered in data. He wanted me to be impressed by a dollar amount, obviously not accounting for costs which the contractor has to carry or taxes which the contractor has to deduct and pay, but he took them away before anyone could have deciphered what the pay period, piece rate, number of jobs or KMS was. 3. He showed me other people pay stubs. WTF. Another red flag is that they were desperate to hire. because they didn't have enough contractors to deliver the work contracts they'd already sold. I had 2 guys from different offices call me after I'd declined the position who apparently still thought I was considering it. Jobs where the expectations of the position aren't clear. The person hiring you should be able to give a clear idea of your responsibilities day to day in a practical way. It shows that the company understands what it wants out of the position. I've worked a couple positions that had a really hard time figuring out who was supposed to do what, that lead to a lot of confusion, and both of them had this in the interviews. If the company you're working for can't define what success in that position looks like, you won't be able to either. I didn't know it at the time, but "you'll be wearing many hats" was a sign that they were going to give me the work of 4 positions and the wage of 1. I didn't last a year there before I left, and now I won't even finish reading job ads that include that line. I once showed up for an interview and the manager wasn't there that day. No one called me to let me know. The assistant manager was not apologetic for the scheduling issue at all. She was literally just like, "Oh, she's not here today," in a tone that suggested I should somehow already know that. She said they would call me to reschedule sometime the next week. I told her I was currently unavailable MW but could come in anytime THEF. She said if I couldn't make time for the interview, I probably wouldn't be a good fit. I said okay, and went on to my other interviews and ending up working elsewhere. You'd think that would be the end of it, but both the manager and the assistant manager badmouthed me to a few other people in the industry, including one of my friends. "Hello? I made time for an interview. You disrespected me by not calling me to let me know it was cancelled. I gave you the times I was available to reschedule, and that was disrespectful somehow? You are required to wear clothing that has the company logo. You must purchase it yourself from the company." At my last place of work, the person interviewing me had a printed cartoon on their wall of someone who looked like a bomb had blown up in their face, with the caption, "I spoke with boss name about it. I guess we're still doing it." That wasn't subtle at all, but I ignored it. The boss was an absolute tyrant who wouldn't listen to her staff, consider changing her mind about anything, or let people do the work they were best suited to do. She wouldn't show up for weeks at a time. The job itself was decent, but she was the worst boss I've ever had. If you can see the flaw before the interview, you can sometimes get a vibe about the place. I once went to interview for a sales position. Aside from the interviewer being 30 minutes late, it did allow me to sit and observe the situation. I realized pretty quickly this was not going to be the place for me. Very quiet except a handful of people on the phones cold calling. Many reps trying to push the contacts on the other end. Just painful to listen to. And when they'd hang up, there wasn't really any interaction with co-workers. Just quiet. And then another call. It all seemed very tense. I noped out of there real quick after the 5 minutes the interview took. Dodge a bullet. I had interviewed for a call center job at another place that's as a complete 180 from that. Yes, it's a call center job, so it is what it is. But there was laughter on the floor. People talking to floor managers. Just a completely different vibe that was more inviting. My current boss gave me a great tip on the last interview I had. He said ask them if you can pick an employee to chat with about how they like the position you're applying for. They'll give a better impression of the place than management. I got the job I was interviewing for. I turned it down because the above is the kind of management I want to keep in my life. Also, the place undercut my pay offer, I found out, which is certainly also a red flag. They told me all about their generous severance packages in the initial interview. Turnover city. I always ask about training and learning curves. Every job I've had that went wrong, I noticed that when that question came up they stumbled. The current job I have, when I asked the question, they had sparks in their eyes as they explained the whole process from day one of shadowing to the transition to working solo. And even when COVID hit, they managed to continue without skipping a beat. Edit. Oh gosh, thank you. My first ever award. Made my week. If they seem too relieved that someone actually showed up for the interview. When you ask, What do you like about working here? And the interviewer talks about the location of the job. It's a great place to live, instead of the actual job. We only want the best of the best. Me. How much are you paying? Everyone looks tired. Also, you don't see anyone in your department before working in it other than the boss. I was once told sometimes the hourly workers go on strike and they lock us in to keep the production line running. But management brings us steaks and we have an informal agreement with the union so you can cross the picket lines once a week to visit your wife. The question was subtle red flags. Employees are either new hires or have been there for 15+ years with no in between. When they feel the need to reassure you in the interview that at that company, they work hard, but also play hard. They don't play hard, it's a sweatshop and they're just trying to convince that it's anything but one. I brought up a company's awful Glassdoor reviews and they got so mad they ended the interview. Well, we don't like clockwatchers here. We expect everyone to be committed. Expecting more work for no extra pay. Well, then you won't mind if I come in at 9:30. You're not watching the clock. After all. They dodge questions on pay, meaning they don't pay enough for what they expect of you. The word family in reference to the employees means they want you to work lots of unpaid overtime. Edit. Also forgot. But if they keep talking about the experience you'll gain, that's also code for we know we're going to be underpaying you. Always ask the interviewer about the last person who worked the position you are interviewing for. How long they worked, and why they left. Their answers can be very telling of the work environment. You'll get full-time hours but won't be full-time ACA. We'll do everything in our power to avoid giving you benefits even though we have you working more than 40 hours in a week. I once turned down a job offer because they mentioned that the previous person in the position had quit after a few months. And most of the people I interviewed with seemed stressed out. Do you have a strong personality? And everyone else who worked there were raging as who I literally got into massive shouting matches with and quit over within 6 months of having started. The money was good but no tie. We work hard and we play hard. Translation. You will work 60+ hours a week. You will be expected to work late nights and early mornings. People will treat this job like their whole life. We'll also underpay you. It may look like a decent salary but when you back it out to hourly it's not even remotely competitive with industry standard. But we have kegs and a ping pong table. Also, if everyone that interviews you has been there less than 2 years, it's a sign that they can't retain good employees. When they tell you what I'm paying you stays between you and me. Don't discuss pay with anyone else usually means they are trying to pay you less than your co-workers who do the same job and don't want you to know. If they tell you not to discuss pay, I never ever followed this rule. It's important to find a way to broach the subject with your co-workers. If they are of the mind frame that it's impolite to ask someone their pay, then tell them yours and pay very close attention. Do they smile a bit? Do they look disappointed? Try to gauge from that. Because we don't discuss pay has always been a way to hold down wages and nothing else. I was interviewing at a local business that had recently been acquired by a well-known corporation. I asked the interviewers a question that I found invaluable. What do you personally find are the most challenging parts of this job? And I watched the light leave their eyes. They both sighed wryly and said it's really busy. And that was all I needed to hear to know that working there would be a nightmare. I emailed afterward to remove myself from consideration. And I am confident I did the right thing. I went into an interview for a low-level admin position. And they made me put my cell phone in a bucket up front, stating no phones are allowed in the back. It reduces productivity. Big nope for me. Not getting to speak with who your direct manager will be. A game room or ping pong table is advertised as a perk. The blatant overuse of buzzwords about your profession. Clearly written by someone with no clue. People seem tired. Had an online interview with a company a few years ago. Was interviewed by the regional manager. Seemed like a normal interview. Halfway through, he let slip that there were 6 other people from his company watching and listening in. But the software was set up so I could not see or hear them. And he actually got a kick out of telling me this. It was like being on a first date with someone and finding out later she had a hidden camera on her and her parents and 6 other family members were watching the whole time. I'm like, yeah. No. That noise. The ad for the job has been running continuously for 10 plus years. Receiving a job offer without a real interview. Or even directly after the interview. That's usually a sign of desperation on the employer's end. Also avoid anywhere that says, "We're like family here." Apostrophe. Also avoid any position that doesn't have a clear job description. Or says something like, "The incumbent is responsible for other duties assigned as management sees fit." They will make you their bitch. Edit. To all those getting caught up on the exact wording of other duties is assigned. Apostrophe. What I mean is, if they give you a very vague description of the job, or not exactly sure how to answer your questions, or have 3 bullet points of job description and then it's all other duties, or if they can't give you examples of other duties, be prepared to become that company's bitch. When they insist the suicide nets are merely a safety precaution, you get hinted at stuff or they beat around the bush on scheduling explanation. Here they like to hire part-time then schedule you 39.5 hours or 30 minutes before full-time to avoid paying insurance and such. If you ask what the opportunities for promotion are and they don't give you an answer. When they get the interview time wrong and then gaslight you about it. I've had a couple interviews where that happened and the person told me it was me who made the mistake. I did not feel bad missing the opportunity. I was told we want long-term employment. Don't just leave after 5-6 years. Okay. What do you pay? And what about raises? His response. $12 an hour. 3-4% increases every year. Nope. Told him I'm all set. This was an armored truck service. I had to carry my gun and wear a vest, which they did offer to pay for. They just took it out of your pay. $600 for handgun, $400 for vest. You had to possess a permit to carry prior to applying. I went back to private M's. Same pay. But I didn't have to protect other people's money with my life for peanuts. Edit. My issue with this is that this seemed like a place that would absolutely abuse you if anyone ever found out you were looking somewhere else. We want long-term employment and will pay you. To me. Besides always hiring, they seem almost overly eager to say, yes, we could do that. Do everything you ask. No job will have literally everything you want. And if your gut is telling you they seem to be promising a bit more than they can offer, they likely are. Your salary is completely commission based and you won't get paid for 2 months. Every solar panel sales job. Edit. I interviewed at a few. Not everyone has 2 months worth of savings right now. Just to add to the flame, I was an 18-year-old college student at the time, and they would schedule my work shift during my class time. This happened to my sister at a certain large coffee chain. Her manager insisted her part-time job should be more important than her accounting degree. We're a family. Translation. We will constantly make you do stuff outside your job description. We will call you on air days off. We will accidentally lose any overtime records. We will yell at you. We will try to buy your affection with pizza lunch days. We will succeed because your morale will be obliterated. My GF once during interview, whilst touring the business premises with the director of development, asked, do you do flexible working? We're looking for rockstars. We're looking for people who will tolerate our type A hours and treatment of employees. Asking if you're planning on having kids. I had a job interview with 2 people asking questions. One of them brought questions for the wrong position. Things I found out later. The person on the IT team who had been with the company longest had been there just under a year. Their turnover was higher than McDonald's, over 50% turnover annually. They had a goal to get it down to 40%. Bonuses only get paid 1 year after you've been there. For a full calendar year. That only starts counting on the 1st of January. If you get hired January 2nd, 2020, you wouldn't get your first bonus until 2022. There was no manager for the programmers. There was no director for the IT team. They had tracking software for your every keystroke. Idle time. Programs you were active in. They would question idle time. Which meant people on the phone with clients would be questioned often because their computers would be idle. There was a lot going wrong, but the interview slip up wasn't enough to really give it away in time. Suffice it to say they didn't meet their turnover reduction goal. As a young lawyer, I interviewed with a guy who wore really expensive suits and spent the interview talking about how his vision is for his employees not to get big raises and bonuses for the first few years they work there. Because they need to leave some in the kitty, I think he said, contribute to the business growing. I guess. As my uncle told me, don't accept a job where you're being paid in future promises. This guy hires young people on the cheap. Wrings as much cheap labor out of them as he can. And then when they ask to be compensated, he fires them and hires another young attorney on the cheap. While he spends all the money on himself. They called and left a message asking me to come back for a second interview. But I never even called them back. Guy quit during my interview. Edit. Thanks for gold. Didn't expect that at all, lol. Copyright airing. Edit 2. Should have given the story. Few years ago I was interviewing for a position at a esteemed gaming retail chain. It's known for abusing their employees and just in general being a pretty tight job due to rude and disrespectful customers. So I'm interviewing for it and one of the lower managers comes in and hands in their keys. Complained about the toxicity of the environment and said they couldn't take it anymore. I got their position after a bit of training and realized I should have taken the warning then. I've been out for about a week now and I feel so much better. We're a family is code for working long hours. Lots of overtime and they don't care about their employees. If they make shift 7.5 hours long so you don't get a lunch. I had an interview once. The owner of the company told me he was going to hire me. Let the man in the office train me. Then fire that man once I was up to speed. He also told me that sometimes employees have to hold their paycheck. And the final capper. Not that I needed it. I had already decided not to work for him, was he told me I looked like his nephew. I am female. We work hard but we play hard is code for we work 12 hours days minimum and we're all alcoholics. It wasn't exactly an interview. It was working in a slumlord building so he didn't really care about stuff like interviews. I was a friend of a friend's nephew and the only person interested in the job. Because I was just about homeless and this job came with a free apartment. So it was really my first day. Everyone and everything completely sight unseen. I showed up to have to go find my co-janitor handyman. Who A. hadn't even been told he was getting a new co-worker and B. was putting a replacement door on my app because one of our crackhead tenants had ripped it off the hinges the night before. Hadn't even been there 15 minutes yet. But, like I said, I was stuck. And that job gave me some of the craziest stories you've ever heard. The one question every job applicant must ask is, why is this position open? Comma. And watch the faces of everyone in the room before they answer. If they tell you the company is growing and it's a new position. Great. If Smiling Mary says it was a job but she was just promoted. Terrific. If they tell you that the last couple of people they tried in the position just didn't work out. Thank them and leave. When they ask you a legal interview questions under the guise of polite chit chat before or after the formal interview. At my current job. After my interview the manager said also just don't get involved in the staff drama and you'll be fine. It has not been fine. You're not going to have kids anytime soon. Are you? Full stop. What are your childcare arrangements? Full stop. are both things my wife has been on the receiving end of. I'd assume you wouldn't apply if it was an issue. Right? Funnily enough, I'm a man and I've never been asked. Isn't that illegal to ask? Low tenure can be a big warning sign. If the entire team has turned over in the last 5 months, it may be for another reason. But I've found that it's usually because the culture is awful.